Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of What the Fork Headlines, aka a collection, a roundup if you will, of headlines that made me say, what the fork? Now, this developed as an offshoot to Good Vegan News because inevitably when I am researching for Good Vegan News, I tend to stumble upon many interesting vegan headlines that don't necessarily fall into the category of good vegan news, don't necessarily fall into the category of bad news either, but just kind of make me scratch my head and say, what the fork? So that's what we're doing today, and this video just needed to be made because when I was doing my last round of research for Good Vegan News, just the what the fork headlines were just jumping off the page. And that's where most of these came from. A few came from elsewhere and are a little bit more recent, and some are actually a bit older, but they're new to me. So without further ado, let's get into the latest roundup of What the Fork headlines. And obviously I'm in a different location for a few different reasons, but we are still here at Forkable headquarters. We have just had a studio shift for the moment. Okay, first up is a headline from Grub Street called "Two Carnivores Walk Into a Vegan Sichuan Joint." Now, is it Sichuan? Is it Szechuan? Is it Sichuan or Sichuan? It's very unclear, but I'm gonna do my best not to mispronounce it too terribly. So basically, the premise of this article was a vegetarian writer by the name of Mickey who takes two of his so-called meat-loving, vegan-hating friends to a vegan restaurant in New York called Spicy Moon. And apparently there are multiple locations now, but it is a vegan Chinese restaurant specializing in Sichuan, now I'm overthinking it, cuisine. The article starts with a bang. Michael Musto, the legendary nightlife and gossip columnist and one of my closest pals, has several reasons for hating vegan food, or more specifically, for hating vegans. Part of my distaste for vegan food all these years, he says, is that I demonize vegans as being holier than thou and patronizing about their choices. I stifle an eye roll. I do too. As Michael continues, I sometimes feel like they disapprove of me even if they don't say so, but in reality, most of them are actually perfectly fine humans. So what? We've got the sort of like full carnist bad attitude about vegans spectrum in this one statement, basically being like, I demonize vegans because they're holier than thou and patronizing, and then a sentence later being like, most of them are actually perfectly fine humans. So that's not news to us. We are used to, just these kind of seemingly very unreasonable, strong opinions, followed by sometimes a little bit more reasonable introspection of being like, they're actually not that bad. Mickey goes with Michael and Lynn, who are both kind of like seemingly like New York scenesters in the fashion space. The article says, together, Lynn and Michael are anti-tofu activists of the highest order, as Lynn will happily tell people. We were once at this charity dinner, me and Mikey. The menu said cauliflower steak. I can imagine where this is going. We were super excited. We thought it was a big steak with cauliflower on top, but in fact, when it came, it was a cauliflower. We were like, what the hell? Remember that, Michael? That was very upsetting. Now, here's somewhere where I actually agree with the vegan-hating carnists, in that I am never too excited to be served a cauliflower steak. I get why restaurants were very excited about it when they first discovered it, but more often than not, it is not done very well. And by not done very well, I mean literally, it's not done. It should have stayed in the oven for a little longer. It is like a just barely cooked slice of cauliflower. It doesn't ever have that kind of like crisp caramelization. They're roasting the whole head and then making slices, so like the inner parts didn't really get roasted. And it's not very filling. So I get why it's kind of a fun and exciting dish, but I understand why someone thinking they're gonna get a steak and then getting a slice of cauliflower, I understand why they would be disappointed. Michael does remember, I don't like something pretending to be something else, except for Lynn. Not really sure what that's in reference to. They don't really explain it further. So the food starts to arrive. The author says the carcass-consuming cuties gobble up the wontons, but how could anyone hate a wonton? The next wave of food comes. This is delicious, Lynn announces, with more than a whisper of shock in her voice. It is just, I find it unbelievable. I just don't know what to say. Michael? I'll never eat meat again, Michael declares, and all it took was one spring roll. Michael is also cuckoo crazy about the Dan Dan noodles. Honestly, I haven't had lunch yet, so I can't read too much detail about all this food because it will make me too hungry. But the food all does sound amazing. While we chow down on this trio of greenery, Michael reminds me why, even though veggie-first diets are growing in popularity and acceptance in this country, some meat eaters remain stuck in the past. Can you explain to me, like I'm in 3rd grade, what's the difference between vegan and vegetarian? He asks Jomi. Which, yeah, I think we do need to explain it to you like you're in 3rd grade, because that's how a lot of carnists act. Like they are stuck in 3rd grade in terms of their like worldview and deductive reasoning skills on the topic of food and veganism, etc. Vegan, she begins before Lynn jumps in to finish the thought, is even worse tasting than vegetarian. Oh, Lynn. Jomi continues graciously, and here's where I say that vegans should win Oscars for how good of actors we have to be, because we have to like hear the dumbest comments, dumb as fork, I should say, comments all the time, and then just be like, well, let me just continue explaining graciously, even though you are being a totally ungracious asshole. Everyone really enjoys the main course. Let me ask this, Michael says between bites, what is the main reason people eat vegetables only? Is it for their own health, or is it for concerns about animal cruelty? Jomi explains she knows vegans who are in it for health reasons, but the main concerns are over animals and the climate. Personally, I would say the main concern is over animals, with climate and health being other reasons or secondary reasons. They then talk about the potential health benefits of a vegan diet. I'd rather die eating a steak, says Michael before he takes another bite of his General Tso's seitan. It might not be gravy meats, but I consider that last bite a good start to my vegan haters charm campaign. It's gratifying to see how quickly some wonton diplomacy can start to win over the hardened carnivores in my life. So I oscillated between just wanting to roll my eyes at every other sentence in this article, but also finding it very interesting from the perspective of just like carnist psychology, I guess. I wrote down that this article, it just kind of shows how sort of committed to the bit a lot of meat eaters are. The bit being like digging their heels in about hating vegans and finding vegan food gross. To me, reading about these people, it seemed very clear that this attitude acts as sort of this defensive outer shell, like they're defending themselves from the unknown. They don't know how the food is going to taste. You know, there are a lot of unknowns. Am I going to be hungry afterward? Am I going to get a stomach ache? Am I going to get gassy? Is it going to taste good? So these jokes and these jabs are kind of like getting ahead of all that uncertainty and being like, I'm just going to talk some shit because that's my comfort zone. But then in the case of this article, when these people are, you know, around some other people, whether they're vegetarian or vegan, and they're in a vegan setting, they're in a vegan restaurant, they're enjoying the food, they kind of start to relax and they let their guard down a little bit, and they actually feel safe asking the questions that they really have. Yeah, I just found that article an interesting study of carnist psychology, and I hope you did too. Let me know. So moving on, this was a headline that I actually thought about incorporating into good vegan news, but then I thought this is just such a what the fork headline that I need to save it. So this article is in the Telegraph, from what I understand it, conservative UK-based publication, and the headline is "The Tick-borne Disease Turning MAGA-supporters Vegan." So this is an article about something called alpha gal syndrome. Alpha gal, she's just an alpha gal, which I feel like I have heard before but didn't know much about. Maybe you guys are familiar with it. Here's how the article starts. As I sit here eating my sad, mushy oatmeal with only organic strawberries and maple syrup, I'm disappointed that it isn't bacon and eggs or a big juicy steak, laments Tiffany, a young mum from deepest Kentucky, writing on Facebook. For some reason, like, mum and deepest Kentucky don't sound like they go together, but okay. I've tried the plant-based meats and they are so horrible. I feel so cheated. I'd kill for a hamburger, adds Paula, her profile photo showing her dressed in full camouflage while out riding a horse. Both women are part of a US online community for people living with alpha-gal syndrome, AGS, a tick-borne illness colloquially known as the red meat allergy. The number of cases has exploded in recent years, with warmer temperatures caused by climate change bringing ticks to new areas and helping them to survive all year round. More than 30,000 Americans are now thought to be infected every year, up from around 4,000 only 15 years ago. The syndrome, mainly caused by the bite of Lone Star ticks, leads to a life-threatening allergy to certain animal products, including beef, pork, lamb, and dairy. With few treatment options available, those diagnosed are forced, often begrudgingly, to adhere to a strict plant-based diet. Here's what gets really interesting. Most cases have been detected in MAGA strongholds like Tennessee, Texas, and Kentucky, places where red meat is a way of life and veganism is treated with the same skepticism as the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop. All right, keep in mind, I've had people comment on my videos before when I've talked about the Telegraph and call it the Tory graph. So I guess that's what they call it in the UK, which the US equivalent would be like if we had a paper called the MAGA graph. So it can cause some pretty severe reactions. It can actually cause someone to go into anaphylactic shock. Not everyone who gets bitten will develop the allergy, but for those who do, even a small amount of red meat can trigger a reaction. There are some new and promising treatment options, however. The Food and Drug Administration approved a new drug, Xolair's, because these drugs always have to have some combination of the last few letters of the alphabet in them, in February of 2024, that is showing promising results among AGS patients. So, of course, like, what could the solution be? Stop eating red meat and dairy? Oh, no, we've gotta, like, this is America, we've gotta find a pharmaceutical way around this. And so that is what we're doing. Meanwhile, the apparent spread of veganism in MAGA country has already been taken up by conspiracy theorists who smell a government plot to put them off their meat. Do you think COVID vaccinations helped this explode? It taught our bodies to attack and put our immune system into overdrive. I have always gotten bit by ticks. Why now? Writes Greg, another unwilling vegan whose grill is now gathering dust. Paula suggests smoking an aubergine instead, and that's how the article ends. So, let me know if you guys have heard about all of this, the alpha-gal syndrome, which just feels like such a fun and flirty name for a tick-borne illness. But also if you have heard about the conspiracies around it. But it's interesting because it's like, okay, so they can't eat red meat and they can't eat dairy. They can still eat like poultry, it sounds like, and eggs and fish. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying, why is this causing, you know, hardcore meat lovers to like go to a vegan diet? But I also have to laugh at the opening line talking about the sad, mushy oatmeal, which is brings up one of my personal frustrations, one of my like most frustrating stereotypes about a vegan diet that is even perpetuated, I think, by a lot of vegans, which is like, why is oatmeal considered like the vegan breakfast? I understand that it's healthy. I understand that it's really healthy and that you can like jazz it up any which way you want. But as a savory breakfast lover and as someone who really needs a crunch, and I get you can put like crunchy things in oatmeal, but just oatmeal is very unappealing to me for breakfast. Like if I'm eating oatmeal for breakfast, check on me and make sure I'm okay. Because it's usually when I'm like on the road and I have no other options and I'm bringing like sad packets with me and I'm like totally desperate, or like something is seriously wrong in my life. So yeah, this kind of frustration of like, oh, like I want to have like bacon and eggs, but instead I'm eating oatmeal. I'm like, you know, there's a lot of things in the middle there, right? There's a lot of things. Okay, you don't want to eat the plant-based meats or whatever. You could also make bacon out of shiitake mushrooms. You could make a tofu scramble. Like there's a lot of different options. I just this week prepped the most amazing vegan breakfast situation for myself where I made a big batch of tofu scramble at the beginning of the week, refrigerated some of it, froze some of it, have the Trader Joe's hash browns, have toast. I swear I bought tempeh bacon, but it's just seemed to have completely disappeared in my fridge, so I guess I didn't buy it. And that's what I've been eating for breakfast every day. And so, Tiffany, get in touch if you'd like the recipe. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on this article in The Telegraph, or as I guess we are calling it, the Torygraph. And just a very fascinating headline, a very what the fork headline, and it was honestly news to me. So next up, this is a real what the forker. How I went from being a vegan activist to chef at one of the world's best steakhouses. It is written by this man, Danny McCallum, who grew up in West Vancouver in a low-income household and basically, started working at a young age, got involved in the food world, working at a concession stand, and then ended up at 15 years old meeting a girl who he was really enamored with and was just very passionate about a lot of things. She was vegan, she was passionate about the environment, she loved music. He ended up moving in with her and her mom. He started reading about the environment and animal rights. He became vegan, and then he got involved with a group of youth activists and ended up going on tour. And this group that he got involved in had a bunch of celebrity backers like River Phoenix and Casey Kasem, and they ended up traveling around the US in a Volkswagen van, basically doing vegan activism. A filmmaker named John Edinger made a documentary about us, and we were even guests on the Oprah Winfrey Show. The group gave me so much needed stability, but after 3 years, I was ready for something new. He ended up living in River Phoenix's duplex rent-free, working for Greenpeace, dreaming of working for Sea Shepherd, and it sounds like he did work for Sea Shepherd for a short time, but then unfortunately, due to immigration issues, had to go back to Canada. He then becomes a cook at a vegan restaurant, his passion for cooking grows, and then one day a friend insisted that I try bacon after 15 years of veganism, and I caved. I ended up loving it. After that, I slowly started reintroducing meat into my diet, but I never stopped caring about what I was eating and where my food came from. And, as we would expect, the rest kind of unravels from there. He continues his chef journey and career and continues cooking meat. He ends up eventually becoming the executive chef at the Jacobs & Co. Steakhouse in the Fashion District, which is, I don't know, apparently supposed to mean something, doesn't mean anything to me, but apparently it's a very famous restaurant. People ask me how a former vegan could become the executive chef at one of the world's best steakhouses, but to me, it's all about ethical sourcing and thoughtful preparation. My passion for and knowledge of food has always been my guiding force. We choose our meat based on how the animals are raised. The fish I order is hand caught. I know the body of water it's from, the name of the person who caught it, even what the fishing boat is called. I like to think there's a bit of activism in each bite at Jacobs, so even Bay Street suits can taste how good it feels to be radical. AKA, I humane wash the shit out of the line of work I do in order to feel better about the harm I'm causing. To me, this article really speaks to the fact of, first of all, when someone goes vegan so young, I don't think many of us are surprised when they don't stay vegan, right? I think any major life decision that's made before your prefrontal cortex is finished developing at age 25, I wouldn't, expect too much certainty or commitment to those big life changes personally. Also the fact that, and this will come up in a later story, the sense of identity that I think sometimes people are drawn to veganism or vegan activism because they're searching for something. And in this case, he clearly was searching for something. He seemed like he didn't come from a super stable background. And then he meets this person that he's really inspired by, and she has so much passion and she has an identity, and he seemed to like that. And he meets all these other people that are passionate and have an identity. So what he really wanted was to be a passionate person with a strong identity, and what he decides to, or how he decides to channel that is through veganism and being a vegan activist. And it is really interesting, like, you do wonder in these cases, like, did this person ever really truly care about the animals? Like, did he truly believe it when he was doing it? Or was he just caught up in the excitement of it all, the celebrity adjacency, the sense of community, and the sense of purpose? Was that purpose about helping animals, or was it just like, I feel like I'm doing something good and that feels good? So that is that article. Another What the Fork headline to check off the list. But let's move on to another one that I actually had been thinking about including in Good Vegan News, but then something at the very end of the article made me think, or made me say, I should say, what the fork? Omnivorous vegan makes no difference to muscle building after weight training, study finds. This is a study that was done by a professor of health and kinesiology at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign and published in the journal Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise. As the headline suggests, there were no measurable differences in muscle building or ability to build muscle after weight training from eating animal-based protein versus eating plant protein only. And it's interesting because I guess previous clinical trials have given the vegan participants plant protein in supplements, which the author says is not realistic. Bird was initially surprised to see that there were no differences in rates of muscle protein synthesis between those eating vegan or omnivorous diets. He also was surprised to see that protein distribution across the day had no effect on the rate of muscle building, given results from past studies of acute responses to dietary interventions and weight training. Now Bird says if anyone asks him what's the best type of food they should eat for muscle building, he'll tell them it's the kind you put in your mouth after exercise. As long as you're getting sufficient high-quality protein from your food, then it really doesn't make a difference. So that was all very pleasantly surprising. Not that I am currently trying to build muscle, but I know that a lot of vegans are, and I know that for a lot of people that is a concern about potentially going vegan. So look at that, you got a little good news here in your What the Fork headlines. Now the What the Fork part of this is that the last line of the article says, the beef checkoff program overseen by the National Cattlemen's Beef Board supported this research. So isn't this kind of hilarious that seemingly the beef checkoff program funded this research, I would assume in hopes to show that basically the opposite of what it did show. I would think they were hoping to show that like animal protein is the only way or the best way to build muscles, and that vegan protein is, inadequate to do so, or less efficient at doing so. And the article or the study clearly didn't show that. So that just made me laugh. It made me scratch my head that this seemed to be maybe a failed attempt of the beef checkoff program to put down plant protein. I'm guessing they won't be reporting the findings of this study on the National Cattlemen's Beef Board website. Found that interesting and kind of hilarious. All right, moving on. This one's a real doozy, and this one is actually from over 2 months ago at this point. I somehow did not see this at all, and I actually saw this story through an ad on Instagram. A content creator was like promoting a reel that they had made about this, and that's how I saw it. So a very strange way to find out about this story, but looking it up, it is indeed true. This is from The Cut, and it says, The Ordinary is selling ... eggs. So for those who don't know, The Ordinary is a well-known, very popular vegan skincare line. Very known to be vegan. One of our, if you will, our safe skincare lines that we know is vegan. So I guess a few months ago, The Ordinary decided to take advantage of the cultural moment of the egg shortage due to the bird flu crisis and they made a post on their Instagram that said, "We heard NYC needed eggs. For the weekend only, The Ordinary sold cartons of a dozen eggs, quote, ordinarily priced at its Manhattan stores in Nolita and on Fifth Avenue." So that's something about The Ordinary, is that they are known to be very inexpensive. So yeah, I guess their theory on this was like, yeah, we'll use this as a marketing tactic to show that like our prices are always cheaper even when it comes to eggs. So they ended up selling eggs that were $2 cheaper than a dozen at Trader Joe's. So this reel that I saw was actually from a creator who specializes in talking about marketing and trends in general, from what I gathered by looking at his profile. Not like a vegan specific creator, but he did say in the reel how bizarre it was that a known vegan skincare brand would sell eggs. Like, why use that as your viral marketing tactic? Why not do like a Just Egg type of thing? Like a Just Egg bottle with an Ordinary label or something. Like, why not lean into the vegan? You're known for being a vegan company. And I feel like this kind of just goes to show that like a lot of skincare brands are just vegan, like just because it's easy enough to be vegan. It's like, it's easy enough to not use any animal ingredients and then also be like, yeah, we like won't test on animals either. That's why I always say, I always roll my eyes when the big vegan media outlets will post about XYZ celebrity launching a vegan skincare brand, because I don't know, it kind of feels just like empty, hollow. Like, it doesn't really feel like it has much to do with veganism. Other Ordinary fans were upset and confused that the brand was selling eggs since it claims to be vegan and cruelty-free. Others just saw it as a PR stunt, and The Ordinary tagging the brand MSCHF in its posts across social media platforms makes it seem like it's exactly that, a moment to troll us. Remember the viral big red clown boots a few years ago? That was MSCHF2, a company dedicated to trolling, and this egg stunt feels quite similar. So I had never heard of this MSCHF company. I guess it's supposed to be like mischief spelled out with an acronym. And I actually haven't looked at the comments on the Instagram post. Let's see. I bet there's at least a few top comments from upset vegans with their feathers ruffled, no pun intended. So yes, indeed, the top comment is, "I thought your products were animal friendly, because eggs are definitely not. I buy your products because they're vegan and cruelty free. Why this now? A vegan company doing this? Please explain. Most of us are very confused. Why is the company that has been a market leader in producing hand-changing, and affordable cosmetics with vegan formulas using eggs as a cheap PR stunt to get attention? Please fire your PR agency." So yeah, lots of comments about how, you know, people being confused and saying things along the lines of, "I thought you were a vegan company." And in the reel that I saw that tipped me off about this whole thing, there were a lot of comments saying, "I'm not gonna buy them anymore." And so it's just like, it's fucking annoying. Like, just like in my video where I talked about the vegan companies not being vegan anymore, it's like we have our safe sort of things that we feel like we can trust these companies, and then they introduce a non-vegan product or they do a non-vegan stunt, and it just feels like, why? But it also makes it feel like, or just confirm that a lot of these companies just are not really vegan to begin with, or don't share vegan values and vegan ethics. And to not get too excited or tied to them or put too much stock into the fact that they're vegan. A lot of them just happen to be vegan because they think they can maybe make more money that way. So let me know what you think about this. It's annoying. Like I said, didn't hear about it back when it happened, but it just felt like, was that worth it? Was that worth the PR that you got? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Let's get to our last story. Now, this is a Reddit headline because, surprisingly to me, there haven't been any actual headlines about this yet, but I think it is, a very bizarre story and a very what the fork topic. So the Reddit post headline is "Another One Bites the Dust. Ali Tabrizi, Seaspiracy director, no longer vegan." Now, just to give some context, I have never seen Seaspiracy. For those who aren't aware, there was Cowspiracy at some point in the 2010s, which was a documentary exposing animal agriculture, from what I understand. Again, haven't seen it. Then there was Seaspiracy, which came out a few years ago. I want to say maybe 2019, maybe 2020. And that was exposing the fishing industry. Again, didn't watch it. For me, when there's documentaries like this where I know they're going to be upsetting, sometimes I just go, I got it. Like, I already know. I don't need to see it. But I know that Seaspiracy did really well on Netflix. It seemed like it was in the Netflix top 10. I remember a lot of people talking about it at the time, people posting about it, you know, a lot of non-vegans talking about it. And I think it was pretty eye-opening for a lot of people. So I guess this guy, Ali, directed Seaspiracy. Now, I wasn't familiar with him either, but apparently, according to him, according to his YouTube video, he was a big vegan activist back in the day and had a big vegan activism YouTube channel. Let me know if you are familiar with it, because this was probably during the days when I wasn't really watching much YouTube, or I didn't have my finger on the pulse of vegan YouTube. But let me know if you were familiar with Ali. He seems, from the comments on his YouTube video, it seems like he was a pretty big activist in the vegan space, and therefore people are very upset about this news. So let me read you the body of the Reddit post. Claiming, quote, "Nobody has been more vegan than me in the past 13 years. Ali Tabrizi is no longer vegan because of marshmallows. Also news to me, other vegans will often eat honey and oysters or meat off other people's plates at vegan restaurants." I think that they meant non-vegan restaurants. Not Ali though. He even walked miles to vegan restaurants and ensured his watch band and shoes were vegan. The last couple of years, he's become more vocal in his right-wing views, which he's now espousing via his YouTube channel. So Ali posted this video on May 22nd, and then he also posted a Substack article to go along with it. So it was like a lot of information to digest. It's a very long Substack article. It's a 50-minute video, which, yes, I did watch the whole thing. And it's called "Why I'm Leaving 100% Veganism After 13 Years, and then in parentheses, "and you might too after this." So if you look through the comments on the Reddit post and the YouTube video, there are a lot of comments mentioning marshmallows. People being like, "Really, Ali? Marshmallows?" And so in my mind, I was like, surely people are exaggerating about the marshmallows. Like, surely it's not about marshmallows, right? Right? And I can now say, having read most of the Substack and watched all of the YouTube, it is indeed quite in large part about marshmallows. So while I think that this person is, and probably thinks of himself as, more well-spoken than any average vegan on YouTube, or ex-vegan on YouTube, I should say, it still is quite a rambling and in many parts nonsensical video. And this guy clearly, like I said, I wasn't familiar with him, but he clearly has a very strong sense of sort of like self-importance about his past activism. So as the Reddit post implies of him saying like, "Nobody has been more vegan than me in the past 13 years. He makes a lot of comments like this in the video, in the Substack. He's like, "I have been vegan for 13 years, not casually vegan, not I still eat honey vegan, not I eat oysters from time to time vegan, not even I wear secondhand leather vegan. I was puritanical vegan." He says he could have given the Jayans a run for their money. That's how committed he was to his ethical convictions. He said he would have been the first person to say they were never vegan when a major vegan stopped being vegan. He said he would have said, "Once you truly get it, there's no going back." And he says, it must have been in the video because I'm not seeing it in the Substack, he basically says, like, I'm more vegan than you.
Just want to get this out of the way in case people don't think I was fully vegan. Believe me, you're wrong. I was probably more vegan than you've ever been. I don't want to be more arrogant, but the point is that I'm just as vegan as you are, if not more vegan than many people watching this.
And I have noticed this as a trend in at least a few different no longer vegan or no longer vegetarian announcements, where people like to really emphasize just how vegan they were in the past. And like, I was the veganest vegan of all vegans. And it's almost as if they think that because of how vegan they were in the past, they've somehow collected enough ethical tokens to last a lifetime, right? I was the veganest vegan of all vegans, and therefore I can go a lifetime now of causing harm, and still the good I did would outweigh all of that bad. That is sort of the undercurrent that I get from those types of statements. So there is honestly so much to get into that I might get further into in a future video because it's just a little too much for our fun little What the Fork headlines video. But, you know, there is this part about the marshmallows where, you know, basically, as I interpret it, he kind of has this moment of Vistopia, which is very relatable, which we all get. And if you haven't heard of Vistopia, I'll put the definition on the screen. I think it's a really great, you know, concept to have been identified, and something that is very relatable to a lot of us, and something that we all experience and that we shouldn't deny when we experience it, but I think is more a reflection of the world at large and the world not being vegan friendly, and more like that's what I get from that. When I feel Vistopia, I'm like, well, the world sucks, and so I need to keep trying to work to make the world better for vegans, for animals. But what seems to happen sometimes is there's this tipping point where the Vistopia becomes less about the world is wrong and more about veganism is wrong. And that is what seemed to happen with Ali here, where he basically was on planning a camping trip with his kids, and he had all these romanticized notions about taking his kids camping and what that would be like, and was going to get marshmallows seemingly at the last minute, and had to drive, you know, really far out of his way to get vegan marshmallows when he could have just gone to the local store down the street to get regular marshmallows. And I really went off about this in a recent Patreon live stream that I did. I mean, a 60-minute round trip into the city over a toll bridge in a part of the town we never go to. Oh, we had to go to a part of a town he never went to. Oh my gosh, it was really bad, guys. Just to visit a specialty vegan store. How fucking privileged does this guy sound, by the way? Like, we had to drive into the city 30 minutes each way just to go to a specialty vegan store. Like, oh my God. I really had a lot of thoughts on the marshmallow of it all. As a fellow s'mores lover, I felt I was qualified to discuss it. If you want to see that full rant, you can check out my Patreon. It is on the dinner forks and up tiers. You can also purchase it for a one-time purchase of $3. But yeah, overall in his video and in his Substack, there was a lot of sort of like coping language. And you know, I think he does bring up some interesting points that probably a lot of vegans are afraid to even like go near or bring up, like, you know, in terms of the ideological purity aspect and sort of like, are we actually doing more good when we're so nitpicky about these like certain specific things? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, maybe those are interesting points to consider, but I also think that humans tend to need sort of like barriers and boundaries to provide comfort, and so sort of the guidelines of veganism provide sort of like a safe barrier within which to operate. Because I think when people start to go like, well, I guess I could just have this, well, I guess marshmallows only really do have this much gelatin, etc., then I think that's where we get into sort of like slippery slope territory. And I have heard that anecdotally from other vegans that things tend to start getting a slippery slope really quickly. And I just think there is something in human psychology where we like kind of like guidelines and regulations, and it just makes things easier. So no, I don't necessarily think that like making sure that the sugar in the candy that you just bought that seems to be vegan, like making sure that sugar wasn't filtered through bone char versus was filtered through bone char, like, do I think that that is gonna like make the biggest difference in the world? No, but I understand why someone might just wanna buy a candy bar that says vegan on it or that has a vegan certification just to kind of feel sure. Right? And also, you know, he, again, talking about the identity aspect, he talks a lot about how like, I was so vegan, it was my whole identity. And I'm like, well, that's kind of on you that you let it become your whole identity. And also that kind of makes it sound like you were searching for an identity and you wanted something to kind of be your whole identity rather than truly connecting with veganism, like the author, the chef, the author of the article that I discussed earlier. And it's frustrating because it's like, don't blame veganism for you making it your whole identity. That's not the fault of veganism. That's not some like fatal flaw in veganism that needs to be addressed. That was like you kind of like went to an extreme and maybe you liked aspects that came with that, like, you know, feeling like you fit into a community or feeling like you were doing good, or maybe even the attention that came with it. I don't know. I'm just saying that is sort of like what I'm hearing to a certain extent. I mean, I will say I appreciate his honesty. He's really like throwing himself into the lion's den, or should I say the hippopotamus den, if we're gonna go with, or the rhinoceros den, if we're gonna go with vegan animals. Are hippopotamus vegetarian? Okay, it could be the hippo den or the rhinoceros den. You pick. But yeah, he was definitely being honest. I'll give him that. I mean, I think he was being honest. Seems like he was being honest, and he's willing to like put himself out there for criticism. So I guess I respect the honesty, but I think there's a lot that goes unacknowledged here, like his extreme privilege. And a lot of the arguments are just sort of like, they just kind of falter. I'm like, okay, what would you have said to yourself, you know, 6-7 years ago if you were to hear a video like this? Like, it's so interesting how he thought he was just like making incredible point after incredible point. And I really do think he thought this video would be well received. I really think that he was expecting vegans to be like, you know what? You actually like argued some points really well. And like, you know, he literally wrote in parentheses, and you might too after this. Of course, he's probably trying to go for the clickbait aspect of it all. But I really do think that he thought he was like spitting some fire and was gonna like change the vegan movement. I think that there's a part of me thinks that a part of him thought that. And the comment section is, as you would imagine, just him getting called out left and right. Just not a single comment that I can see like agreeing with him, speaking in support of him. One of my favorite comments, sounds like you've thought so deep, your mind has turned to marshmallows. So yeah, those are my just quick overview thoughts on that. There is just so much to get into. There's way too much to get into. Like I said, I got more into it on the live stream, although I was like reading the article live and digesting it live on the live stream. So I hadn't watched the video yet, and now I have. And like I said, I think that I might talk more about this in an upcoming video that I'm planning to make. I think I'll be working this in to another video in the future. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Let me know your thoughts. So that's it for today. After this video, I hope you're all scratching your heads and saying, what the fork? Let me know how many forks you needed to scratch your head after this one. Was it 1 fork? Was it 5 forks? I think I would give this roundup of stories like a 3 out of 5 forks. There was even some, you know, some good-ish news in here too. if we sift through some like weirdly good news, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more videos. We are getting quite close to 10,000 subscribers, which is very exciting. If you want more from me, weekly Discord chats, extra monthly content, podcasts, live streams, check out my Patreon. And I have said this before, and I have continued to post more on the free tier of my Patreon, so you can just join that for free, and I throw some stuff up there every now and then. I actually recently did a review of the Trader Joe's sour strawberry belts, which I had been dying to try for months now, and I finally got to try them, and I did a little review on the free Patreon tier. So check that out if you'd like. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate all of you and your wonderful comments and your wonderful support. Oh, also, I somewhat recently opened up channel memberships. So it is $1 a month and you get priority reply to comments. From the beginning of my YouTube journey, it has always been very important to me to reply to comments, and I always try to reply to all of them. Lately, it has been getting harder to keep up, which is a great thing because it means I'm getting so many comments, but I did open up channel memberships, so if you'd like to, for $1 a month, it supports the channel and you will get priority comment replies. So that's it for now. I think we've covered it all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!